Hey there, it's Teresa here. Hi, I'm Teresa Yankin. I'm healthcare informaticist. I'm here every week talking about AI, FHIR, and healthcare. If you've ever worked with a FHIR implementation, you've heard all of the success stories, the seamless interoperability, modern web standards, the promise of finally solving healthcare data exchanges' biggest problems. Let's talk about what really happens when the rubber meets the road and why AI might be a game changer that we've been waiting for. We're not just dealing with the technical hurdles, we're dealing with the fundamental issues that can make or break FHIR strategy. Think about this for a second. We're going to use a use case that we always use. You're trying to coordinate care for a patient who comes into the ED. The triage nurse needs to quickly access medical history. The attending physician needs current medications. The lab needs to know what tests to run. Billing needs to know all the insurance information. Everybody needs different pieces of information in different formats at different times. Now imagine if every department spoke a slightly different language, used different forms, and had their own organizing files. You're probably like, Teresa, that's exactly what's already happening. And that's essentially what we're dealing with when we talk about FHIR implementations across our healthcare systems or trying to connect to different healthcare systems. Here's something that caught my attention. According to the survey that CAQH did last year with health plans, they found that over 50% of organizations say that their biggest barrier isn't technology. It's not that complexity. It's actually competing priorities. That side of the desk work that we have to do, but we may not have the resources for. Now we're asking our healthcare IT teams, who are already stretched thin. They've got staffing shortages, regulatory compliances like no surprises, burden reduction. We're asking them to take on what pretty much amounts to be a fundamental transformation of how each one of these different systems communicate. The technical challenges, those are real too. Research from HL7 when they did their V2 to FHIR implementation guide, they showed getting in these HL7 V2 messages might turn into the patient resource, the encounter resource, financial transaction resources, practitioner resources. All of these resources represent what used to be just one coherent message. You might find that moving from one FHIR version to another can cause some really subtle runtime bugs that won't show up until you're in production. Let's talk about the terminology challenges. Those alone are staggering. My friends over at Health Summary, they did an analysis in 2024 of the FHIR package registry. They examined over 75,000 code system resources from about 2,400 packages, and they found that there were significant data quality issues. So we're building foundations that are not as solid as we thought that they were. Here's where it gets interesting. AI agents like Microsoft Copilot tackle these problems. Instead of those developers that are spending weeks manually mapping these HL7V2 messages to FHIR, they can actually analyze your existing messages and generate those mapping templates in minutes. AI can scan your value sets in your code systems, and then they can identify the inconsistencies. They can process thousands of code mappings simultaneously. Always still need a human in the loop to oversee what's happening. Versioning nightmares. AI can analyze differences between your FHIR versions and help you to identify breaking changes in the IGs. When FHIR R6 comes out and you start to implement R5, R6, instead of manually combing through the spec changes, AI can highlight exactly what's going to implement your specific implementation. It's pretty interesting stuff. Now, there is a skills gap, and we are all aware of this in the FHIR world. This is huge. Existing developers, they don't need to become FHIR experts overnight. They can use AI to help them generate FHIR profiles, maybe validate resource structures, and maybe even write some conformance testing. It's like having that FHIR consultant right there in your IDE. Security teams, they keep telling us that FHIR APIs can create new vulnerabilities that we're not necessarily prepared for. The same CAQH research that I talked about earlier found that security is listed as the top concern regarding compliance with FHIR standards. AI can review FHIR API implementations. They can help you to identify potential vulnerabilities. They can suggest security best practices when it comes to healthcare data. Here's what I find most valuable as a health informaticist. AI can help with the business side too. It can analyze your implementation timelines. It can identify resource bottlenecks. It can even help you to build stakeholder presentations that translate those technical challenges into business impact. I've talked about this before. Over 50% of FHIR and AI projects, they struggle with competing priorities, not technical issues. For both 2023 and 2024, the State of FHIR surveys conducted by HL7 showed that 84% of respondents expect FHIR adoption to increase. And of course, we're seeing that. We're seeing it in regulation. We're seeing it in all the work that we're doing now. Those organizations that figure out how to effectively combine human expertise with AI capabilities, they're not just going to implement FHIR faster. They're actually going to implement better. This is important. AI is not magic. You still need people who understand healthcare workflows. They understand regulatory requirements, and they understand your system architecture. What AI does is that it amplifies your existing expertise, and it can accelerate the tedious parts that will burn out your best people. If you're working on those FHIR implementations and you want to understand how AI can transform your approach from technical mapping to business strategy, I'd love to hear about your specific challenges. Drop me a message and let's talk about what's really holding back your implementation. Because organizations that get this right, and I always say this, they aren't just solving for today's interoperability problems. They're building the foundation for the next generation of healthcare data exchange. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to catch you guys here again next week on the flip side.